Hello, I'm John Brisson, author of Fix Your Gut, health coach. Welcome to the Fix Your Gut YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about the different substances that you may be using, whether it is a little bit of a drink or a little bit of a toke or a smoke, to help you get through the day, and how those substances might hinder your adrenal function both in the short term and in the long run. Many people need their cup of coffee or their cigarette or even a drink or even a toke to get them through their day. And a lot of these substances, people associate them with reducing stress, which is true to some degree. They may reduce mental stress, but they can definitely increase physical stress. All of these substances to differing degrees can increase the adrenal production of both adrenaline and cortisol, and both of those in people with adrenal fatigue, in different stages of adrenal fatigue, that could definitely be a bad thing. You wouldn't want to have elevated cortisol in people with high cortisol, for example. You won't want to increase that because it could make them, feel worse, more stressed out. So all the different substances, let's talk about those four. Let's talk about caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, and THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. And which one of those are the least likely to cause adrenal issues? Which one of those are most likely? Okay, so let's start with what's most likely to cause adrenal issue. That one's easy. It's nicotine. Nicotine, it does a couple of things. It modulates the dopamine reward pathway, increases both dopamine and acetylcholine, which is why people can become easily addicted to cigarettes and nicotine-containing products. And nicotine greatly increases the release of adrenaline and cortisol, which is why when you smoke a cigarette or you put a little pouch of dip in your mouth like I used to 10 years ago, you get that little bit of nicotine kick. The adrenaline makes you more alert, makes things more sharper. The nicotine, it triggers this release of those chemicals, and in doing so, it gives us, like the benefits I mentioned earlier, alertness, better memory function, better cognitive function. That's why people use nicotine, other than getting stuck in that reward feedback loop, which makes it very difficult to quit. Nicotine does have its own set of issues. It strongly activates the HPATG axis, which is the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the adrenal, the thyroid, and the gonadal axis of the human body. And what it does when it activates this axis is it triggers, production and release of both cortisol and adrenaline. So nicotine itself, especially with someone dealing with adrenal fatigue, and their adrenal glands either produce too much cortisol or adrenaline as it is, or they can't produce enough of it, it causes a huge spike. And that's the problem, is that even if you have low cortisol, it doesn't gently increase the cortisol levels so you can get better functioning throughout the day, so you get more energy, so you can feel like you can handle your day better stress-wise. It doesn't do that. Instead, it spikes it, so you get a huge burst of energy, and then you get a huge crash afterwards. Nicotine is probably the worst substance out of the four when it comes to adrenal function. And if you are suffering from adrenal issues, I definitely would recommend that you try to taper down nicotine. I wouldn't completely quit it cold turkey, because that can cause with the issue with the lack of dopamine and acetylcholine being produced by the body, and the issues with the dopamine reward pathway and the withdrawal that nicotine can cause. You definitely want to titrate off of it if you have adrenal fatigue over a few weeks, to help you recover. But yeah, nicotine out of all those four are the worst. The next worst out of all of them is alcohol. Now, alcohol has been consumed by humans since the Stone Age, but it has greater widespread use the longer we go out throughout history. So, there is some benefits, just like there are some benefits to nicotine, but there's a lot of drawbacks associated with nicotine. It's the same with alcohol. There are a few benefits of wine consumption on occasion. Wine's high in resveratrol, it's high in prebiotics, high in polyphenols. It may contain probiotics and antioxidants. So there are some studies that say that the occasional ingestion of wine may be beneficial. However, most alcohol is not beneficial in its consumption for your health, for most people. And in fact, a lot of the things that I mentioned that you can get in wine, you can get that from just drinking grape juice, except for the probiotic bacteria, probiotic yeast. You can get that from consuming fermented vegetables. So alcohol in itself, unlike nicotine, it has, I would say, even less medical need or less importance on your health, and most people, including myself, abstain from it. Don't consume any of it because it's better that way for your health not to. Now, alcohol in itself is poison. It has to be metabolized by the liver by alcohol and aldehyde dehydrogenase, which turns the ethanol into acetaldehyde into a short-chain fatty acid acetate, which your body can easily metabolize and handle then. So it taxes the liver over a period of time. Chronic alcoholics end up with fatty liver disease and cirrhosis of the liver and stuff like that because it damages the liver is constantly detoxing alcohol. So the occasional alcohol beverage consumption, like if you drink a glass of wine once a week or something, that's not really going to have an effect on cortisol or adrenaline release that we see. If you drink Saturday night, you want to drink a glass or two of wine, you're okay. The problem seems to come from binge drinking or consuming large amounts of alcohol over a period of time, being an alcoholic or alcoholism. That can cause issues with cortisol production. Binge drinking or alcoholism, is shown to increase cortisol and adrenaline production significantly over time. It lowers heart rate variability, increases blood pressure, causes sleep disturbances within itself, causes cortisol issues, and so moderate long-term use of alcohol or heavy long-term use of alcohol, or even sporadic binge drinking where you don't drink, let's say, 5 days throughout the week, but on the weekends you consume alcohol excessively. That does have a negative impact on your adrenal function. But the occasional glass of alcohol or the occasional shot, that doesn't seem like it affects cortisol very much. The third compound is caffeine. Many people in the United States are addicted to caffeine. Caffeine is a central nervous system stimulant, people. It is addicting. Yes, I know that there are some benefits of ingesting caffeine, specifically in the form of coffee, dark chocolate, and tea, and there's difference of why each of those items may be beneficial for your health. There's different polyphenols in each of those, and they can contribute in different ways to your health. But that being said, caffeine does increase adrenaline and cortisol release, and so it does seem that in healthy people, consuming it on occasion, it doesn't really spike it that much. But if a person with poor adrenal function, it can. It doesn't spike it as much as nicotine, for example, but it still spikes the release of both, and that could be detrimental in someone with adrenal fatigue. Especially, for example, if you consumed caffeine at night, where you're, per your cortisol curve, cortisol greatly increases when you, about an hour before you wake up in the morning, and then it slowly decreases throughout the day, and it levels off at bedtime per circadian rhythm. So you wouldn't want to, if you are going to consume caffeine, let's say that you're suffering from stage 2 to stage 4 adrenal fatigue, and your production of cortisol is low in the morning. Some people may find benefit of consuming a cup of coffee in the morning to increase their cortisol a little bit in the morning. But for most people with adrenal issues, they should avoid caffeine. And there are some studies that do show that if you do consume a cup or two of coffee continuously, that the caffeine might not have a strong enough effect on your adrenal function compared to, let's just say, you haven't been drinking any coffee or anything like that, and you decided you had adrenal fatigue and you needed the extra pick-me-up in the morning, and you started drinking caffeine. That could have a worse effect on your adrenal glands than if you constantly consume caffeine beforehand. But even though you do get a little bit of a break if you're a chronic caffeine consumer, I still recommend for most people with adrenal fatigue and most clients that I've coached, including my own self, I saw a benefit when I had adrenal fatigue of slowly titrating down consumption of caffeine until I could eventually eliminate it from my diet, except when I occasionally ingested dark chocolate. The fourth substance is THC. Now, I love the medicinal purposes of marijuana. I think there are many medicinal purposes of marijuana, and science will eventually bring more of that to light. And that being said, though, THC does increase cortisol production. And there were some initial studies in rats that it could also hinder thyroxine, T4 levels in the human, or the storage hormone of the thyroid, in rats by about 90%. So they thought initially that THC could hinder thyroid function, but later recent studies in the past year or two that have been done in humans show that it actually doesn't. It may be beneficial for people with hypothyroidism to smoke marijuana, that it may not hinder thyroid function like it does in rats. That being said, we still need more studies. There's only been 2 done, and one of them was a survey. But it does seem like it does. That THC may not hinder thyroid function like we originally thought. But it does increase cortisol. Now, it appears that's based on dosage and frequency and person. So if you smoke a couple of hits, take a couple of hits of marijuana, or eat a small dosed edible, and you have adrenal fatigue, it may be beneficial. It actually may protect you against stress or any cortisol. It may help modulate your cortisol in a more favorable pattern. You know, that dural cortisol pattern we talked about earlier, where it's elevated in the morning and drops off at night. You don't want it too high in the morning, but it should be, you know, higher in the morning and drop off during, you know, until you go to sleep. And THC does seem like it may help with that. But you know, there are some studies that show that if you do more than that, let's say that you haven't smoked THC before and you started to start smoking White Widow, doing multiple bong hits throughout the day, that may increase cortisol and that may cause issues. Now, THC doesn't seem to increase adrenaline very much like the other substances do, which is a good thing. So it has a less effect on the adrenal glands than all the other substances. And you know, so if you're a chronic marijuana user, the studies also show that you probably don't want to stop it, unlike the other, like caffeine or nicotine or alcohol, because in chronic users, it seems to have a different effect where it seems to protect from stress, but we still need more studies. It's only if you just started to smoke and you have adrenal fatigue, you probably don't want to do it in large amounts. You just want to smoke marijuana a little bit, you know, occasionally during the week, or eat an edible 1 or 2 days out of the week, so you don't get that cortisol spike that THC can do. But if you're a long-term user, there doesn't seem to be much benefit if it does help any of your medical conditions, if you have adrenal fatigue, to stop using THC, at least at the moment per the studies. Now, people who like CBD or oil, or people who use CBD products, that's actually different than all the other substances. CBD itself seems to be extremely beneficial for people suffering from adrenal fatigue. It seems to help greatly improve the functioning of the HPA-TG axis, and it seems to not have a negative effect on greatly spiking cortisol or any issues with adrenaline. So CBD is separate. You know, I'm just talking about it because they're both contained in marijuana, but CBD is separate than THC. So if you're using CBD for any health issues and you had adrenal issues, I don't see a problem with that. I wouldn't caution it like the use possibly of starting to use THC or any of the other substances. So again, I mean, if I have to rate the substances, THC, of course, is at the bottom. It is the least likely to cause issues, especially if you were chronically smoking beforehand, before you got adrenal fatigue or started having issues. The next substance would be caffeine, followed by alcohol. Unless you are an alcoholic or a binge drinker, then alcohol would be at the top. But if you're an occasional drinker of alcohol, it would be second. And then nicotine would be first, as far as the substances that would hinder your adrenal function the most. I hope you found this video informative. If you like our content, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a good day.